Hello, welcome everyone. We are joined today by Erica Jacobson, who is the caregiver support caregiver support program manager. Oh my goodness, that's a mouthful at the Sioux Falls VA Medical Clinic. And Erica is going to talk about the caregiver program for those who are caring for a veteran with ALS. Take it away, Erica. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. As Annie said, my name is Erica Jacobson. I'm with the Caregiver Support Program with the VA at the Sioux Falls VA Healthcare System. So I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of all the services and programs we offer. And then if you have questions at the end and you want to contact me privately, I'll have my information and we can go from there. So to start off with, I always like to tell people that the Caregiver Support Program through the VA is kind of a program within program. So you're going to hear me say the word program a lot. So I apologize in advance. But we kind of have two halves of our program that fit together. And the first is our program of general caregiver supportive services. And we always love our acronyms at the VA. So we call that PGCSS. And then there's our program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers, or PCAFC. In short, I always tell people, I apologize, one second. Sorry, I had to mute my phone. I always tell people, I always tell people that you can think of it as our general caregiver program, and then people know the comprehensive program as our stipend program a lot of the time. And I'll talk about how they overlap and the different characteristics of each of those programs. So just some history about the VA Caregiver Support Program here. Originally, the idea of the VA formulating its own caregiver support program came up in 2008. There was talks in Congress about the needs that were arising for caregivers of veterans, and that led to the legislation that would put into place the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers and our program of caregiver supportive services. And that was around 2010. And so officially in 2011, those programs were established, and more specifically with the comprehensive program, or PCAFC, the stipend one, we were able to start taking applications for that one in 2011. Originally, the program of comprehensive assistance was only available for veterans who served after September 11th, 2001. And they had to have some sort of injury that they incurred during their service that created the need for a caregiver in order to remain independent in the community. So at the time, if you were paying attention to the newspapers or the news, a lot of times they were talking about veterans who would come back with horrific injuries, missing limbs, severe TBIs, burns, things that maybe in past conflicts people wouldn't have necessarily survived, but thanks to modern medicine, they did. But that also meant that they were going to live with lifelong disabilities, severe mental health issues as well. And their family didn't want to just put these young veterans who sometimes were 20, 21 years old, sometimes even younger, coming back in nursing homes for the rest of their lives or mental health institutions. So the VA created this program to be able to pay their family members to stay home and care for them, as many of them were already quitting their jobs to do so and were struggling financially to survive. So in 2011, that's when they were able to start officially taking applications for the comprehensive program. Now, the general program, which I'll talk more about as well, there is no application for that. It is open to anyone who identifies as a caregiver of a VA eligible veteran. There's no stipend that goes along with that program, but there's access to all sorts of supportive services for caregivers. So things kind of operated that way up until 2018 when the Mission Act was passed. And the Mission Act basically expanded a couple things for the VA. You guys will hear a lot in the news right now about the Heirs Commission, which is making recommendations about VA facilities nationwide. It also expanded our care in the community services. And the third big thing that it did was expand the program of comprehensive assistance to veterans of all eras. It also kind of put into place a very standardized application process, as well as not requiring that the disability be tied back to a person's service. So I'll talk a little bit about that eligibility piece when we get into talking about the comprehensive program. And so right now we're in the middle of expansion of that comprehensive program. In 2020, we were able to not only let veterans who served after September 11th apply, but also before May 7th, 1975. And this October 1st, we'll be able to take applications from veterans of all eras. It won't matter what era they served in. So just a little bit of history on our program there. So to begin with, we have all sorts of resources and places to find information, but the first place you can stop to really learn about VA caregiver support services is our website, which is this caregiver.va.gov website. It gives you information on both programs. It also will hook you up locally with the caregiver support program in your area. So these programs I'm describing are nationwide. Every VA has this program. I just run this particular program out of the Sioux Falls VA, but there's someone like me at every VA facility. It also will give you contact information for our caregiver support line, which is a 1-855 number that people can call anytime if they're having some sort of need related to caregiving with a veteran. They just want to talk to somebody, if they're looking for resources, if they're having some sort of urgent issue that they need someone to help talk them through, you can call them. The website also has all sorts of tips and tools and resources for caregivers on self-care and diagnosis-specific caregiving, really anything you can think of. And finally, you can apply for the comprehensive program online through the website as well. And those applications will get routed locally to your local VA. The caregiver support line I just mentioned a little bit is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 10, that's Eastern time. So I think for us, that's 7 to 9, if I'm right. I think we're an hour behind them. And then Saturdays, they have some hours. So they're not open 24 hours, but they're there most of the time. It's staffed by VA professional staff. Most of them are social workers that are answering the phone. And they will try their best to give you resources and link you to local referral sources, as well as making sure that the local caregiver support team in your area reaches out to you and makes that connection. And sometimes they offer supportive counseling or assistance by navigating the VA, a lot of things that we do locally. So first, I'll talk a little bit about our program of general caregiver supportive services, and this is the one that is open to anyone who identifies as a caregiver of a VA eligible veteran. There's no application for this one, really. The caregiver just has to have a desire to want to participate, and the veteran has to give permission. That's okay as well. So I put the mission of that program on here, which is to serve caregivers with respect and service excellence through a wide range of support, education, and tools that empower them to care for themselves and the veteran. So who is a general caregiver? Sometimes people don't necessarily self-identify as a caregiver, as you might imagine. And so we kind of give people a general idea of if you're doing these things, you're probably a caregiver, but this is by no means all-inclusive. So a general caregiver is a person who provides help with personal care services to a veteran who's enrolled in VA healthcare. So maybe the veteran needs an assistance with an activity of daily living, you know, that eating, dressing, bathing, going to the bathroom kind of thing. Or maybe they have a need for what's called supervision or protection. So maybe they have dementia or some sort of mental health issue where they can't be left alone because they might wander off, or they're just not safe to be alone for whatever reason. and that caregiver is providing that supervision piece. For a general caregiver for this program, they don't necessarily have to live with the veteran to be eligible for services. So our general program is built on these 4 pillars, which is education and support. So we like to do things like today, have talks with you to share information about the VA and services that we provide, and giving that support to caregivers directly so they know where to turn when they have an issue. We also like to build collaborative relationships, both internally with other VA programs and out in the community, because the more people you know, the more access to resources you probably have. And so we're always looking to build those relationships. We also do a lot of outreach in the community. I've gone to county fairs, I've gone to car shows, you name it, just lots of different stuff to provide education and outreach and to get the word out there that this program exists. And finally, the kind of bread and butter about what we do is making referrals to community agencies or to other VA programs, and really securing those resources for caregivers of our veterans for whatever it is that the need that they identify that they have. We also do offer education and support in the form of different classes and trainings. Some examples here on this slide. We offer quarterly SAVE trainings, which is the VA's version of a training to help caregivers support veterans who struggle with suicidal thoughts or behaviors. SAVE, I can't remember the acronym right off my head, but basically the gist of it is to look for the signs of suicide, ask the right questions. You want to validate people's feelings, and then make referrals as needed or provide the support as needed. And we walk people through exactly how to do that. We also have a program called Building Better Caregivers, which is an online 6-week course that caregivers can do with other caregivers in a virtual environment, where they kind of make a self-care plan and they network with other caregivers to solve various problems that they're struggling with into relation to caregiving. Our Annie program is actually one of our most popular with our caregivers because it's a pretty passive intervention. You know, some of the stuff we offer is great, but it also is kind of a double-edged sword because we don't want to give a caregiver more stuff to do. We want to make their lives easier. And so sometimes caregivers have a tendency to go, oh, I'll do that and I'll do that. And they spread themselves really thin. And so we kind of really try to help them put the brakes on, like, do you have time to do that? Or maybe we can think of something else. And Annie is a great example where what Annie does is text you 3 times a week. And it can be really simple things like, you're doing a great job. Or did you know people with dementia still can be depressed? And this is what you look for. And so Annie sends kind of those encouraging texts, some education texts related to diagnosis specific issues. And it's just there when the caregiver has time to look at them. So there's no obligation like, well, I better get to this right now. It's just kind of like I said, that passive intervention. We also have one-on-one and group coaching that we do with our caregivers through our REACH program. And someone who participates in REACH will work with one of my staff members on a 4-session course where they maybe they're caring for somebody who has PTSD. In fact, I might have the book right here. And what we do is we'll send the caregiver this, oh, my blur thing's not, let me unblur myself so you can see it a little better. Okay. Oh. I might have to try at the end. I'm sorry. But
okay. You are not blurred. Can you hold it right by your face?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this here is our REACH VA book. It's pretty thick. And a caregiver will get this. And there's 4 sessions in this. And we sit down and go through talking about, you know, what is like if they chose the PTSD track, what is PTSD? And what are things you can do to not only take care of yourself in caring for someone who has PTSD, but what can you do to help them in their recovery? So we have all sorts of different tracks. We have one for dementia. We have one for ALS, I believe, and for MS. And we have one that's a general one too, just for caring for a veteran in general. And like I said, we do that individually, and sometimes we do that in a group setting. We also offer health and well-being coaching. In fact, in the near future, we're going to be having a course called Taking Charge of My Life and Health, and an RN on our team is teaching that for caregivers, where they kind of will do a wellness plan and talking about what's some of the things that are most valuable to them in terms of their health and how they can kind of work towards that in addition to their duties of being a caregiver. Every VA is a little different. We have a saying in VA, you've been to one VA, you've been to one VA, because of course we can't do things the same. And so sometimes different VAs, depending on the site, will do different fun activities besides these national resources. So something we do here is a book club with our caregivers. And another thing that we are trying to plan to do is like a walking group for our caregivers. So what the fun thing about that is we get to be creative to meet the needs of people locally, depending on what they're looking for too. So yeah, and this is just some more education courses and groups that we do. The VA actually has a National Caregiver Support Center, and that's in Memphis, Tennessee. And folks that work for that, all they do are trainings for things like REACH for staff and self-care courses for caregivers. They used to be able to fly out to different VAs and teach them in person. I hope someday we can do that again, but right now it's all virtual for our caregivers. We also offer things that are kind of one-offs a couple times a year, like Caregivers First, which is a really short course where we talk about how you navigate the VA system, because that can be kind of a daunting thing for people. Some of our caregivers have really gotten years of experience of being a caregiver and being able to really do a good job of taking care of themselves at the same time as being a caregiver. And so they decided to do peer mentoring, where they get certified as a mentor and they get matched with a caregiver across the country, and they provide that mentorship to another caregiver. Just kind of a way for people to give back if they want to. Annually, we do caregiver summits. At every VA, they will have at least one of these events a year. And these sorts of events are not necessarily designed for caregivers themselves, but they're designed for professionals that work with caregivers. So people in the community at different agencies that will interface with caregivers of veterans or other VA staff. And like this year, we did one that was in partnership with our suicide prevention program that talked about how do you support caregivers who are supporting folks who struggle with suicidal thoughts or behaviors. And we talked about different programs through the VA that can help with social isolation, or different programs that specialize in that severe mental illness, or working with folks with dementia and how that plays a role in that suicide prevention piece. And so that's just one example of what we do at our annual caregiver summits. We have resource fairs where those can be held virtually or in person, depending on the situation. But we basically invite community providers from all over to come and present on what they do and network with each other, so we can strengthen that support network for our caregivers so they know what's out there. And like I said, we do lots of outreach. We try to give away lots of swag if we can, stress balls and fancy pens and stuff to our caregivers and let them know that we're appreciative of them. And we also try to do consultation and guidance to folks that reach out to us from the community, as well as other areas of the hospital too. So we're always trying to broaden our connections and our networks so that we can get the most tools possible for our caregivers. We also do just make referrals, obviously, like I mentioned, to community resources or other VA programs. And sometimes caregivers really appreciate that because it can be a full-time job trying to navigate the VA system yourself. And it's nice to say, hey, you guys handle this for me. This is what I need. Please get back to me. So I'm going to shift gears here and talk a little bit more about the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers. And I want to preface this by saying that the folks that end up being eligible and get enrolled in the stipend program have access to all the stuff I just talked about, as well as some additional benefits, which I will discuss here. So like I said, the Mission Act in 2018 expanded the stipend program to include veterans of all eras. So in order to be what's called administratively eligible for the program, you have to have two different things. One is that as of today, if you were to give me an application for the program today, you would have to either served after September 11th, 2001 or before May 7th, 1975. And in addition to that, you have to be at least 70% service connected. And for those of you who don't know what service connection is, it's the VA's version of disability. So a veteran maybe goes off, like I always use my dad as an example. He's a Vietnam veteran, and when he went to Vietnam, he didn't have certain problems that he does now. So he got malaria when he was over there. He injured his knee, messed up his hearing. He does have some PTSD. So when he came back, he filed a claim with the VA saying, hey, I have these disabilities because of my service. And what the VA does is an exam. And based on that exam is they will rate a veteran from 0 to 100% disabled. The higher the percentage, the more access to VA benefits a veteran has. 70% is pretty high. Veterans in that bracket usually qualify for the VA to pay for nursing home in some cases if they need it. It also qualifies for them to apply for this program. And there's a money amount that comes with that every month. So if someone's 70% service connected, they get a check every month based on that level of percentage, kind of like Social Security. So the higher the percentage, the more disability they get.
Erica?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, those with ALS are 100% service connected. Is that not right?
That is correct. They still would have to file a claim to get to, that they don't just award it. Yep. But yes. Right. Yep. So I don't know the ins and outs of that process specifically for someone with ALS, but maybe I should back up a little bit. So VA kind of has three different branches. There is the cemetery, National Cemetery. There's healthcare, which I work for, and there's benefits, which would pay the service connection. So a veteran with ALS, yes, I think it's something called a presumptive condition, depending on when they served. So all they do is file a claim with the Veterans Benefits Administration, and then they usually can become 100% disabled because of that. And like I said, October 1st, 2022, these service dates won't matter anymore. The veteran just has to be at least 70% service connected to apply for the program. But that is only the administrative eligibility. There is an application process where we look at the clinical eligibility, which I'll talk about here. So this is some information straight from the Mission Act, talking about what we would look for in the assessment process. So we get an application for the comprehensive program. We call the veteran and caregiver to verify the information. And then we talk to them about scheduling an appointment for a veteran and caregiver assessment. And the goal of that is just to get a snapshot of all the care that the caregiver provides the veteran on a daily basis. So we want to gather as much of that information as possible. The second assessment we do is with an occupational therapist. Their official title is a clinical assessor, and they do what's called a functional assessment. And in those assessments, we're looking for one of two things. A veteran can qualify right now if they need help on a daily basis every day, every time, and it has to be hands-on assistance with an activity of daily living. So those are things like eating. So does the caregiver have to physically help the veteran eat? Or bathing? Does the caregiver have to physically help the veteran bathe every time, or go to the bathroom, or dress? So those are things that could qualify a veteran for the program. The second thing that we look for that some people can qualify under is it's called a need for supervision, protection, and instruction. And I'm kind of simplifying that there because there's lots of language in the statute. If you want some great bathroom reading, I can put the link to the actual law and you can read through it if you want. But I always tell people that's a really fancy way of saying that because this veteran has some sort of mental health or physical issue, they cannot be left alone for long periods of time because it's not safe. Whether they will choke on something if someone's not there, or they will harm themselves in some way, or wander off because they don't know where they are. Those are kind of things that we look at. And so that's why we like to say with this program, we don't necessarily look at diagnosis. Like we don't look at, oh, they have ALS, they're right on the program. We look at level of functioning and what the caregiver is helping the person with. So the application process, let me just say a few things about that. Usually we do it within 90 days or less. And if delay is on the VA side where we're having to reschedule with the veteran and caregiver because of staffing issues or whatever, we can go past that 90 days. But if the veteran or caregiver just cannot participate in the assessments and get everything done within 90 days because they're rescheduling, stuff like that, the application is denied after 90 days if it's not done. But we don't really, at least locally here in Sioux Falls, knock on wood, we don't have a problem with that. But we always tell people that up front because we want to move it along. We don't want people sitting, forever waiting for an answer if they're going to get on the program or not. And once they are approved, they get backdate paid to the day we receive the application. We call that the VA likes acronyms. We call that the VAR date. So valid application receive date. So sometimes caregivers are like, well, we're wasting all these time with this assessments. And so we like to tell people like, well, if we get you on, we'll make up for that. You'll get that back pay. Some additional things besides the financial piece, which is nice for caregivers. And there are two different levels to the stipend. Level 1 is the lower one. Level 2 is the higher one. And it's based off the zip code where the veteran and caregiver live. That determines the amount that the caregiver gets. In our area, a level 1 person usually gets around $1,600 a month, and a level 2 usually gets around $2,800. That caregiver then also has access to CHAMP VA, which is the VA's version of dependent health insurance for loved ones of veterans. Normally, only spouses of 100% disabled veterans can access that. So being on this program does allow those folks that are with a veteran who's between that 70 and 100% to get on for health insurance. We do also offer veterans who are on the comprehensive program what we call enhanced respite care. So for those of you who don't know this, every VA eligible veteran has access to 30 calendar days a year of respite care. And they can use that in any format they want. So that could be in-home respite care. It could be inpatient at a nursing home or a local VA if they have the capacity to do that. It also can sometimes be in adult day healthcare settings. So like in Sioux Falls, we have a contract with the Center for Active Generations, their Daybreak program. So any veteran has that 30 days a year they can use. Veterans who are on our comprehensive program don't have that 30-day cap. So we don't call it unlimited respite because if we were paying for 24/7 respite, then we wouldn't also be paying for a caregiver, obviously. But we also can just use our clinical judgment with the caregiver and as our local team to decide, hey, the caregiver Susie is going to have her knee replaced and is going to be in the hospital for 3 days. Let's pay for someone just to come in so Mr. Smith can stay home. And he doesn't have to go to a nursing home during that time or something. Other smaller benefits that caregivers get being on our program is they have access to what's called beneficiary travel, which normally only veterans can get, which is if they drive separately to appointments for their veterans, or they come here for education events that we offer or anything, we can pay for their gas. And if they need lodging, we can pay for that too. At some point, I say that because we've been waiting with bated breath for it. Caregivers on our program will also have access to free legal and financial aid or financial planning services. So helping them with budgeting or creating a will or getting guardianship of someone, they'll be able to access that for free through our comprehensive program. The holdup right now, to be quite honest, is contracting with someone nationally to be able to do that. And that takes time. And so we're hoping that'll get done sooner than later. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through this part here because this probably has come up in the news before. But so I explained that we have the expansion that happened with the Caregiver Support Program because of the Mission Act in 2018. So there were a cohort of veterans who have been on the program since that 2010, 2011 time, up until when the program expanded, and we call those our legacy veterans. Right now, the hope was that when the new criteria came down from the Mission Act, everyone would be reassessed based on that criteria, and then determinations would be made if some people would have graduated off the program at that point, or if some people should stay on. What they were finding is that these two groups of veterans have very different needs. As you can imagine, these younger veterans seem to struggle a lot more with significant mental health needs that their caregivers help them with, versus these older veterans that we're getting on the program have much more physical needs. And so the way that the criteria has been written in the Mission Act really, that's been a challenge to apply that to both groups. And so it was decided back in March that we would stop doing reassessments on our legacy veterans and, in fact, people who are in the program right now, so we could relook at this criteria so that it could include, be more inclusive of veterans of all ages, not just specifically focusing on physical needs necessarily. So long story short is the folks that are on the program right now, they are not being reassessed at this time. And in the future, there might be different criteria for the comprehensive program in order to get on. But right now, the process that I explained to you is what we follow today. I just kind of explained that there. So the application process, I'm going to blaze through this because I kind of talked to you guys, but there's 3 different ways that a veteran and caregiver can apply for the comprehensive program. They can apply online here. That's usually the fastest and the easiest. They can just fill out what's called a 1010 CG, and if you type that into Google, it'll come right up, and it's a very simple form. You could hand fill that out and drop it off or mail it to your nearest VA. You also can mail it to the central eligibility address as well, and then they will disseminate it to the local VA where you are. And sometimes the easiest thing is to find out who your local caregiver support team is and just call them, and they can kind of guide you with what would be the easiest way for you to apply. I love this little graphic, and I can include this PowerPoint in with the presentation, but this is the whole application process and all the steps we do. So very briefly, we get the application from the veteran, we call them and determine if they're eligible to continue with the process. If not, we refer them to our general program. Then we do the caregiver veteran assessment and that functional assessment that the occupational therapist does. We also try to collaborate with their primary care provider to weigh in on the application as well. We send all that information up to our, it's called our SEAT team. It stands for Centralized Eligibility and Appeals Team. And every region of the country has one, and they're the ones who really make the determination of who gets on the program and who doesn't. And they let us know there's enough information here for us to continue with the application, or they will deny at that time. If they come back and say, yep, keep moving forward to complete this application, the caregiver does this very brief training that they just basically read a booklet and have to answer a very short test, and they can do that online or over the phone, and we help them with that. And then we do a home visit just to make sure that the home is safe. Send that back up to the eligibility team again, and they make the final determination if someone gets on, and if they don't, we tell them again about the general program. If they do, we assign them a case manager, and we notify them of all the benefits that they get. And we try to do this whole process in 90 days. Veterans and caregivers can appeal. So if they get denied, there's several different avenues to appeal that decision. So it's just not a one and done. If anyone would like more information about that, you guys can certainly reach out to me. And this will talk about it a little bit too. Mainly, people can either apply through that Veterans Health Administration route where I work, or they can appeal through the Veterans Benefits Administration. So those are the folks that would pay out service connection money. So there's different options for appealing, and that's kind of what this talks about here. And that's what's talking about the VBA route of appeal on this slide. And with that, that is an overview of the VA Caregiver Support Program. If you guys have any questions or want more information or to see if you qualify, or you know someone who might qualify, you can call the national number there, or I will make sure that my contact information is included with this presentation, and you can reach out to me personally.
Thank you so much, Erica. This is really helpful. And it's just nice to have it all in one place by somebody who knows what they're talking about, because we like to tell people that there are all kinds of programs, and it's really nice to have this all in one place. So I'll share it with my coworkers as well.
Yeah, and what I like to tell people is, sometimes people avoid the VA because you don't know where to start. So even if it's not necessarily a caregiver support related question, if you want to reach out to me because you've heard me talk and you've seen my face, I can definitely try to point you in the right direction. I have no problem with doing that.
Thank you. Appreciate you being a resource.